Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Podcast. We are super excited yet again. I know I say this every time, but it feels like every single guest that I've had is just amazing. They're going to bring so much value to you. So Mr. Jason Yarusi, Jason, thank you very much for joining. How's it going, man?
Well, I'm excited to be here. It's been a minute, so I'm really excited to connect with you in person. I'm excited and happy I took my bulldogs out of the room because they would have made a ton of noise that wouldn't have been able to be edited out here. But dude, psyched.
Awesome. Well, good, man. I've had the pleasure of meeting Jason this year and his wife Peely, and they are just a mindset powerhouse of family, health, financial freedom, multifamily apartment complex, construction, all kinds of fun topics that I love talking about. So I think you're going to gain a lot of value from today's show. You want to grab a pen and a piece of paper that will really help you if you're taking notes. And if you're, somewhere you can't, well, just tune in later and grab a pen and piece of paper then, rewind. It's going to be a good one. So Jason is essentially, like I mentioned, a number of things. So I'm going to let him give himself a proper proper introduction. But to read a couple of bullet points from his background, he is an active syndicator. They have about 800 units under management today. He's the host of his own Multifamily Live Podcast. He's an avid runner, a workout enthusiast, father, and a husband. And the reason we want to title today's show 100-Mile Mindset for Buying Apartment Buildings is because he has an amazing mindset that really does apply from, his marathon, ultra marathon running mindset to, buying buildings. And I think you're going to like today's show. So Jason, let me turn it over to you, my friend. Give us a proper introduction. Tell us who you are and what you're doing in your own words, and we'll just start a great conversation here.
No, and I love that, but I am constantly getting an education, right? So every talk, every conversation, we're on Clubhouse talking, all I'm doing is getting educated, right? And, even my little kids, right? Every day getting educated, right? So it's just one of those purposes that pushes us forward. So, but Jason Yarusi, we invest in multifamily, my wife and myself. We moved down to Tennessee a couple of months ago. I do run a lot. I've run every day for probably the last couple of years now. I don't know, rain, sleet, snow, hot, colds, don't feel good, ear hurts, foot hurts. I just run. And that's been a lot of my mindset journey of just creating a consistency in my flow that allows me to understand that there's a ton of greatness in this world. You just have to understand that you will not have the best day every day, but you find ways to win every day, and it makes every day better after that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Every single day, rain, sleet, or snow, like the males, get that thing out there, except they skip Saturdays and Sundays. Jason doesn't. That's awesome, man. Well, I need to apply a couple of those things and just get out there. I'll start once a week is probably where I need to start, right? And then
the consistency, it's one of those things that I started doing, and I was never an avid runner. I played sports, but back in 2008, started running and started training for marathons and grew to a couple more marathons into some ultra marathons. But it becomes part of my day because we all we all have our days, right? And we find that little things. You could have the best day, but then you get like a thorn in your side, like a random thorn, and you're like, oh, my day's ruined, right? I got a little thorn, right? But in that part, that's how most of our days and how we treat most of our days, where most days have so much good in them, and we find ways to find the little wins. So I get up at 4:32 a.m. I have a glass of water, drink a coffee, meditate, and then do a few other little exercises, and then go run. And I do that. And every day is a little bit imperfect, more perfect, but I do that consistently each and every day to the point that creates a win. So I get back, and then I start having some more things that will happen, and maybe they're not all perfect throughout the day, but I know that I've created wins, and I can keep growing on that just a little bit each and every day.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that mindset. My wife's encouraging me right now, not by any of her words, but by her actions. And she has been on a tear in the last, several months. She's been getting out there running.
Fantastic.
She's using the time to listen to her podcast on positivity and mindset. And,
Nice.
and I'm usually focused on like real estate podcasts, which we talk about positivity and mindset, but just hearing her, it's like, oh, this is what I learned. This is how I did it. Mindfulness and staying focused as she's exercising. And I was like, I love it. So
that's great.
To start
we find that no matter what, right? So say you close a fantastic deal, right? And that happens the day before. The next day, you still have to wake up and have that first conversation with your mind. Right. Yeah. And that happens every single day. And so no matter if you have people for you or against you, none of that matters at all, because if you can't get up and have that conversation with your mind each day and prepare yourself in that way, you're going to have a hard time going. Right. And that happens each and every day. And the more we can continue to build, and, because my hard might be someone else's easy. My easy might be someone else's hard. Right. But the more I can grow into understanding what is this may have been hard 5 years ago, but now this is another part, right? Now we can start solving bigger problems, which creates bigger and better solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this conversation because this is a commercial real estate podcast. We're talking about buying apartment complexes, investing for financial freedom, whether you're building wealth or trying to preserve wealth. The way we implement it through multifamily as a vehicle is what we're talking about. Why the heck are we talking about all this mindset and running and, getting up with a positive attitude and meditation and all of that? It's because you'll hear this over and over again. It's if you're going to embark on this journey to buy, 1,000 doors, 2,000 doors, 5,000 doors, whatever goal you have, maybe it's just 100 unit apartment complex. It starts with the mindset and your ability to say, I can do this. I am, this, however you want to talk to yourself. For me, it was good enough, smart enough, and gosh darn it, I could do it. Right. Yeah. The Saturday Night Live, Stuart Smalley is like, that's the first person I remember talking positive, talking about positivity, and people made fun of that guy. And he was literally the butt of a joke, but I'm like, man, that's exactly what I believed in. My faith keeps me in this mindset. Do not be afraid. I promises to prosper you, not to harm you. And so that is a big one for me. But I mean, all of this stuff has to be applied to what we're going to go do, which is buy this big apartment complex. Tell us the way you kind of put these things together. Why are all these mindset, components relevant to commercial real estate investing?
Yeah, sure. So, let's take Clubhouse. Been happening a lot, right? And I can hear from some people's words, and I just try and give them little parts where like they're giving themselves way out. So I'm going to try to do this, or maybe I can become this, or I'm those other points. Or you hear other people like, I'm going to be this. I will do this. I can do this. They haven't done it yet, but they've already put their mind in a way that they can go out there and do it. And so that next time that they get kicked in the shin, well, I am doing this. So they just get back on there, right? And it's a lot like New Year's resolutions. Like, I want to go, I don't know, anything, right? I want to go do anything, but you say, I'm going to try to do something. And then that's why most fail, because there's nothing invested in that. And so the people, I heard some lady the other day, and she was so invested to getting into real estate because of this, to help her son and those other points. And I was like, this lady's going to make it happen because she set her mind right to do this. And no matter what, right, and no matter what comes in her way, she's going to get knocked down 107 times and get back 108. And with anything, especially like, multifamily or whatever, it's, you get that question, well, how long does it take for my first deal? I was like, I don't know, maybe it'll take 2 years, and then the next one takes 10 days. It will take what it takes, but it's the steps of repetition and the steps of carrying it out that's going to get you there. So the action is going to create the momentum that's going to create the results. And so some days are going to be harder than others, but if you can just keep doing that little bit of action each and every day, right? So I have a student today, he just called me, he's out of deal, but he's been plugging away and just had that question, like, you sure something? It's not like, it's just, you got to keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Like and then that's the, luck meets preparation, right? Now you've put in the steps, and for each and every of us, and for running ultra marathons, right? If I set my sight just on the ends, well, then most everything's going to be a letdown, because I'm doing all the process with like buying an apartment building. If it's just about buying the apartment building, then I'm going to be let down, because almost all the time is not buying the apartment building. It's building the teams, talking to your investors. It's putting together the deals, or meeting brokers, or underwriting deals, or all those steps that come in place. That's the continual flow of work that you will go to. But it's that build in your mind to say, okay, I got it. This is something I'm learning from. So how can I get better at my questions so I can get better at my answers? So each time I can shorten my route, right? Because, for most of us to buy our first large apartment building, it would be like if we're going from New York to LA through Mexico, right? And it's like something like that.
Running.
Yeah.
Not on the car,
right? Yeah, doing a handstand
for the most part, man.
And so when you figure it out, it's okay, now there's who's doing this well, how can we take more direct steps? And you start giving yourself that bandwidth. But then now, even on the direct path, you learn more questions to ask to get you to better answers that makes the process more fluent. So instead of walking on your hands, you're now running. Instead of running, you're now, in a car. And now, okay, now we're in a plane, and now we're flying. And now we can figure out better ways to do our process, better ways to get to our goals, because we know we're going towards it. And we're just doing these little things that give us the momentum to get there.
Yeah. That's so awesome, man. So thank you very much for, just your insight and your mindset and how important those things are. I, like myself, I had a limiting belief. I have limiting beliefs that I still work with every single day.
We all do.
The ones that I had that kept me from commercial real estate investing were developed when I was 26. And I read a book, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which kind of like opened up my eyes to real estate, right? There's a lot of us. And then the second book that I read, I went back to the bookstore and looked for every purple and yellow book I could find. The second one I read was The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. Have you seen Ken McElroy's book?
Oh, yes, I have. Yeah, so great book.
He's like Rich Dad Advisor series. And it was, the ABCs. So I go, this is exactly what I need. I don't have any property today. I need to learn the ABCs. And it starts with, how to buy a $10 million apartment building. Mm-hmm. And I go, this is not the ABCs. This is the wrong book. I think I messed up the cover. Anyways, I read it cover to cover, and it talks about building a team, finding property or brokers, raising private capital, essentially syndication, how to analyze the market, how to analyze a deal, how to do due diligence, how to, look at everything top to bottom. And it basically, I reread it now and I go, this is everything I learned in all my education and courses and every seminar I went to for the last couple of years. But there was that limiting belief that said, you're a 26-year-old kid. You can't go buy a $10 million building. There's no way. And Abel, you're not anywhere near a millionaire. I don't even know why you're playing in this space. Go buy a single family house. And that was my limiting belief. And then I bought single family houses for 10 years. And that was my limiting belief on my own self. And even after I told my parents and my sister, I'm going to go buy apartment buildings. And then for 10 years, I bought single family houses before I made the leap. So it's just, that's
what it is. It's when your mind's ready. Right. And so it's like, someone can tell you something each and every day. And until you're ready to hear it is when you're able to apply it. And for so many of us, and so I get a question a lot, like, what would you tell yourself like 20 years ago? Like, it wouldn't matter because I wasn't ready for it. So for me today to say, go do this. And because I wasn't ready. Right. And maybe I'd give you more thoughts, but it wouldn't be beneficial to say, okay, because I'm not that person. I'm that person today based on what happened 20 years ago, what happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. It's you can't go back. You can just look at it and say, okay, am I learning and progressing? Am I learning and progressing?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. Now,
absolutely.
We want to talk about a couple different, let's diverge on two paths if we can.
Sure.
Active investing and then passive investing, because I think we've got an audience with both people that want to learn how to be better passive investors as limited partners in commercial multifamily syndications, and then those that are trying to do it. That mindset applies to both because, I remember my first $50,000 check that I'm writing on my multifamily syndication. I was passively, I had to turn over, relinquish all this control. And I had to get over that, 112 page private placement memorandum. And then I had to, talk with my wife, and my wife was like, well, if we don't try it out, nothing's ever going to change. So kind of had that mindset, right?
Yeah.
And then for the active investor, you got to start taking action to get in if you want to get in. So what advice can you give for the passive investors that are trying to, figure out, I don't even know where to begin. It's 50K, 100K, or maybe you already have a few $1 million, but you're trying to figure out how to diversify out of the stock market. Give them some insights or advice from the mindset on passive investing.
Sure. I actually just had this conversation with an investor before this. It comes down to, what do you want? Right. Because that's gonna help determine a lot. Right. So say you have $100,000. What's important to you? If you put this $100,000 into a passive investment, is cash flow important to you? Is portfolio diversification important to you? Is depreciation or tax advantages important to you? Are you fine not to have cash flow, but you'd rather have the opportunity, potentially with more risk, to have a bigger back end? Or are you okay with development where potentially there's no money for a couple of years and everything's going to come in one fell swoop? What is it that's going to be beneficial for you? Are you okay with a short-term hold where you just want your money to work for 6 months? Or would you rather not have to have the money back for 5 to 7 years and not have to redeploy it? That's going to, are you only comfortable close to you, or would you be comfortable 1,000 miles away? So you start to identify what this is, because then you could speak to operators and have them, you can help them, right? And then from an operator standpoint, talking to that operator to see what's their business plan. Does it align with what you're looking for? Do you even like them, right? These are not, a couple months. These are investments that potentially you're going to go and invest for a couple of years. So do you like that person? Does that person have a track record? And even if it's their first indication, do they have a track record that shows who they are, right? Consistency and in other ways or other parts of their life. And I had another great call today with a guy who passive investor looking to go move into Dubai apartment buildings, and guys invested in and he's like, I just don't know much. I'm like, well, you invest in a deal. He's like, I invested in 20 something unit syndication. I was like, well, let's learn from that. And, so how's it going? And he's like, I'm not completely psyched because I'm not having any communication. I'm like, okay, great. So what's the first thing you do as an active operator? You communicate with your investors. So we do monthly emails, monthly reporting, because he's like, I'm getting that from another single family thing. And it's great because I have that constant flow. So I'm like, okay, as an operator, now you should do that in terms of what you're doing. You want to create the consistent flow so they know who you are. So when you have those investors in there, they say, oh yeah, he shows up consistently. I constantly am in the know for what happens there. And then they'll be more, we'll say, likely to want to invest with you in the future. Because unfortunately, he's a little turned off because he hasn't had much response or reporting, right? Which is, of course, a thing. And then for active, again, it goes back to, what do you want? And it's that same part. Real estate is this open ocean where you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So what do you want? And let's define it, right? So you hear a lot, like, I want 1,000 units. Like, well, why? Like, what does that mean to you? What's that going to accomplish in your life? So I give you 1,000 units today. Is that good? Like, why? Like, what does that accomplish? Because you might be looking just for a certain amount of cash flow and only need 200 units, right? So they don't get stuck on someone else's thought, right? Someone else's goal. You figure out what your own goal is, build it back. Like, I want to have this much, so I have this much net worth and this much monthly cash flow to replace my W-2 job. Okay, so that's the goal. Great. How many properties would that take? Is it, if we're looking for 1,000 units, is that 50, 20 unit buildings or 350 unit buildings? What does that come out of there? And where do I want to invest? Do I want to invest close to me again? Do I want to invest far away? Am I interested in projects that are just like improving properties, or I'm looking for big turnarounds? And then you can start honing it in. And most of the time from the start, there's not a horribly wrong answer. The worst answer is not to pick anything. It's pick something, because you can go down that path and learn better questions, get back to the better answers, and then say, you know what, maybe I don't like this path. And then at least you've gotten yourself to eliminate one thing, right? And now you're like, okay, I don't have that anymore. And for most of us in anything, when we want to go try something, we're like, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that, or this over here. And we don't do anything because we're too many places at once. And then our mind just like shuts down.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much, Jason. That's amazing. You make me think about, first one, choosing what you want.
Yeah.
That alone is super hard for a lot of people to do, really deciding what it is that you want. I was on a podcast interview yesterday with Kyle Marcotte, and he's a 22-year-old. He bought his first deal when he was 20, and
I know Kyle. Yeah.
Okay. You know Kyle, right? And,
mm-hmm.
He's a Christ follower, and we were talking a little bit about it. And the words that he used yesterday was, he lamented in his dissatisfaction. He was really just upset with where he was and what he wanted to do. And, he was like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to work forever. I don't want this for my life. And he, he said, focused on the sincerity of like, I do not like this.
Yeah.
And that allowed him to make a decision to go off on this path of owning, 500 freaking doors and millions of dollars under 22 years old, right? He couldn't even drink, but he's buying this $5 million deal. So the point of that is, like, most people can't really even determine what they want, or not most, a lot of people can't. And if you can focus on that, what it is that you really want, exactly what Jason said, what is your end in mind? And that's a Stephen Covey thing, man. If you start with the end in mind, whether that's the end of your life or the end of this decade or the end of this year or the end of whatever you're setting your targets at, and work your way backwards. I can't remember which book or what it was from, but I always envision the starting at the peak that you want to that you want to end at. So whatever mountain peak, and envision or project yourself on the top of this mountain peak and look back down to where you're at today. Project yourself there and say, oh, realize that there's a lot of ways up this mountain. I could take the vertical straight up way with one person, hooks, and and I got my gloves in my hands, and I have a rope. I could go free climb, or I could take this long, trail around the base with a group of people, and it's going to take longer, but I know I'll get there eventually. It just depends on how you want to get there, because there's so many different paths. But until you set the peak that you want to get after, you're never going to be able to know like all the different options to get up there. And, just start there. It's great.
You said two fantastic things among many is that, the first is that, we're typically running away from pain or towards passion, right? And those are our 2 points. But if you can't figure out what you want, figure out what you don't want. Like Kyle was talking about, like label, what is it you do not want, right? Because then that can eliminate a lot of stuff, lead you to where you do. And then the same part about imagining, right? So, where you want to be, that's usually why most don't get started, right? So I want a mansion or live in an island or I don't know, $10 million, but it's just something you're saying, but there's no vision of it, right? And so it becomes so scary that you'll never take action. And what that will do is you'll say, I want $10 million, but it's not real enough. It doesn't mean anything to you. It's got no girth to it. So instead you'll retreat back to having that $9 an hour job, because even though you hate it, because it's more comfortable and you're used to it. At least I'm good in what I'm used to, right? At least I'm good in what I'm comfortable with. Even if I hate it, I'll just stay there because it's better than, something I fear, right? But in that front, if you make it real, just like you said, in that mountain, great analysis, right? So, you don't jump to the top of the mountain, you figure out what's that first step. And that first step leads it to the second step to the third, right? And so my first 100 miles, if I went out there and was like, okay, I'm just going to run 100 miles, like your mind would shut down because I've never done it, right? Yeah. But at that same part, I'm like, okay, let me just get to the first aid station and we'll figure it out. And then the next part, you're like, let's get to the next aid station. Okay, we'll figure it out. Now we're 50, 75, wherever we are. Maybe I'm like, let's just get to the next tree. Okay, cool. Let's get another 200 steps. Okay, cool. Let's get another 17 feet. Okay, cool. And then eventually you're at the finish line, right? But it wasn't 100 miles. It was 100 miles with 97,000. Let me just get to here and see what happens. And that's like most in entrepreneurship, right? It's like, yeah, okay, let's just get to there and we'll see what happens. And then you're like, okay, I made it here. Okay, now where do we go? Okay, cool. And you just keep going, and the road just keeps opening up.
It's so incredible, man. And so this is, let's break into this because this is incredible. It's one of those limiting beliefs that I have about myself. I'm like, I could probably never run a marathon. Well, number one, I'm out of weight. I'm overweight, out of shape. I need to get my butt in the, out there. But 100 miles is even like far surpassing a marathon. So let's talk about two things. Your 100 miles, just give us demystify how this actually happens. And then just like you just did, but maybe a little more tactical. How many times have you done it? How many marathons, et cetera? Those would be great milestones for people to learn about. And then let's apply it to, your commercial real estate. Cause I do want to know a little bit more about your holdings and kind of where you got started. And just like you did, you didn't start with an 800 unit apartment complex. You started somewhere. So let's kind of go into this. Dude, how many times have you run 100 miles?
3, a couple 50, wow. A lot of marathons, some planned and some I'll just get out and just run a marathon for the day. And then, I'll run, usually a 5 or 6 miler every day. And for those, it's like, my plan, and I'll give it apart. So my plan for 100 miler is new plan, no plan. And I'll tell you why is that my first ultra past the marathon was a 50 miler. And I was like, okay, it's up in New York. I'm like, I'm going to be all planned. I'm good. Okay. 2 goals, run the uphills. I'm usually strong. Don't get your feet wet. Mile 3 in, it was such a steep rock. You couldn't run. I was like, okay, so that's out. Mile 4, first of 4 rivers to cross. My feet were soaked from about, like 30 minutes in, So I'm like, okay, new plan, no plan. Right. And that's like a lot is that usually it's like the Mike Tyson thing, right? So you have this plan laid out and the second the plan's not to the agenda, you're like, well, I can't do it now. Right. But at the same part, you say, I got a direction. Okay. I'm going to the end and I'm just going to take that step. Okay, cool. I get some more info, get some more guidance. Right. And so I've done that a lot. I mean, even with quarantine, I did a lot of, I think Jesse Itzler has that mile, the mile a day marathon, mile a day. So I did like 18 marathons in the 1 month, and we're just growing. And you don't know you can do it until you just get out there and start doing it, right? And so for you to run a marathon, 100%, why can't you? And that's just literally the part right there. Like, and most times people say, I want to go do this. I'm like, great. And even like pick a market. Well, which do you like? I like them all. Just pick one, it doesn't matter. Just start somewhere and it will give you the next answer of what you need to do. And even for apartment buildings, we were doing we were doing our heavy construction, a bunch of different real estate. And we were just finding like, we wanted to get back to really controlling our day. Our kids were, we just had, just had our first son, but we were just like, wow, we're doing this active, like single family stuff and it's going well, but we're just creating more chaos in our day. We're just getting farther away. Now we're having less time, right? So we want more time. We're having less time. something's the matter here, right? And so it took us 2000, maybe 14 or 15. We brought some out-of-state rentals, some 2s, 3s, 4s that we were able to put together a team. We were, far away, get it all done, get tenants in there, and all of a sudden checks start showing up. We're like, well, this is pretty cool, but it's not really, you can't, it's hard to scale. You start looking at that, like, I'm going to have like a bunch of 2s all over town. And from there, we said, okay, not the thing we wanted to do. So what else is there? And we found large apartment investing and really dialed all in, said, okay, who's doing it successfully, and just work to follow their steps, right? Because we all want to do it ourselves, but who's doing this well? And we brought our first 94 unit building.
Man, that's awesome, man. So how did you, everything you just said is awesome. There's so many nuggets in here. So this is one of the shows I'm going to have to probably rewind myself and get a lot of notes going. So that's really cool. The single family part of it was what I did, for 10 years and just realized, man, this is not getting me closer to my freedom point. My net worth was increasing and that was cool. It was nice to have a little extra in the bank account and growing, but it was definitely not anywhere the life that I had envisioned.
Sure. Yeah, understand.
That kind of led me to multifamily and multifamily syndication and passive investing first, and then doing a number of active deals.
Hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it.
Tell us about your first deal. Have you invested passively first and then go on, or were you active all the way? It sounds like it sounds like you had a heavy, like you said, construction background. Illuminate a little bit more of this so we get it.
So my father, I come from like 5 generations of like an Italian construction family, right? So my father back almost like 45 years ago now said, this carpentry thing is kind of ridiculous because anybody can just start tomorrow. So I'm going to go do this thing where I'm going to move and lift houses. And so he started that in New Jersey. Crazy enough. And so it's been a cool business. And I've seen him move everything from churches to space vehicles to vessels to moving tons of houses from the 1600s to 2000s, lifting all these properties because of flooding. And back when Hurricane Sandy happened, his business just went through the moon and he was so busy. And my brother was working with me. We went out there and helped dad, and it was a lot of fun. Couple thousand homes we raised over the course of those years. And as we transitioned into the multifamily, honestly, you don't know. That's why you align yourself with people, right? And you align yourself with mentors because you get the big parts, like find a deal, like get a loan, like figure out what to do with it, yada, yada, yada. But it's all those little pieces in between where you say, well, how do I bridge that gap? And for us, we found the people that could keep us on that path. And it's journey where like a lot what mentorship is. They're not going to, you don't need a mentor to tell you like, hey, you need to go buy an apartment building. Like you got that. It's those little in-betweens there. So we started really honing in on a market, putting together a team, talking to friends and investors about what we're doing, getting specific, talking to banks, talking to brokers. And we were able to find this 94 unit. It was off market. We offered on it and we were really far away, but we offered a lot lower than they were asking. And they basically countered back at our asking price. We're like $1 million off. And we ended up just saying like, this is why we're here, right? So it wasn't like we were just like shooting him in the foot, but we said, this is where we could be. Well, lo and behold, we kept tracking these properties and months go by and we see it like nothing's happened with it. So we went back and I think we raised our offer like $50,000, and all of a sudden they came back and counted like $600,000 less. And we were now at a delta of like 300K. And over the course of couple weeks, we're able to negotiate that and get that at a price. That was fantastic. First deal, a lot of fun. Did that in May of 2017. We're able to do all kinds of improvements. So they had, in a market that's 3% vacant, they were like, I think they had 94, like 10 vacant units, all rent ready. They didn't have a leasing person who, she was like watching the dog, the bounty hunter, wasn't leasing units. Within a week, they're all rented. And each time we're renting, we were walking in, $150 premiums just on lost lease, because you could walk across the street to the neighboring building, getting $150 more. And so they had 3 maintenance guys in the property not doing anything, so which didn't need. Their expenses were running wild. Their utilities were out of control. We were able to put a water savings program in there, cut the water bill down by like 30%, which of course gave us, I think the value at the time, like increased it by like 350,000 just for changing toilets. After 13 months, we refied the property, gave a chunk of capital back to investors, which was exciting. And because of the path of progress, which was not really underwritten for and just happened based on some sales and some other people coming in there and putting capital in the market. And I think like month like 30, was it maybe month 30, we sold the building, and we actually exceeded our 7-year hold expectations in that like 2.5 years, which was great.
Boom, baby.
Boom. Fun.
Boom.
Yeah.
What a great first deal, and what a great way to enter. And some people right here will hear, oh, well, you know what? Jason came from this real estate family background. And so,
not even so much, but I'll take that out. Yeah. It was construction, but yeah.
Well, on the construction side, but even then they'll hear that and say, oh, I could never do that.
It's like, hey, oh, they come from, they make tomato sauce. They must be good at making pizza, right? It doesn't parallel,
Yeah. And so you got to be able to get over yourself a little bit, if I could just say it. You got to get over yourself if you're listening. It has nothing to do, Jason says, it had nothing to do with the fact that his family was in quote unquote real estate. Probably had anybody in your family ever bought an apartment complex before?
No. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I mean, not everything went right. We had like an electrical surge that was caused by the city that like broke like 6 electrical cables underground that they said was just happenstance. I was like, that just magically happened, right? So took out like 8 units for a day, but we had the right team in place. We had it's a pretty safe area, and there was just like a random shooting, which scared a bunch of neighbors. There was like just things that, got a couple 100 people living in an area, like things happen, right? So not everything was, like roses, but it was just like, okay, you get the team there. Okay. Get the team in place so things can be handled accordingly when things pop up that are unexpected.
Yep. Yeah. And that's how these deals get done, is you stretch your mind, but beyond what's possible. Yes, there's going to be some issues or problems that come up that you've never thought about, never dealt with before, that people around you have never dealt with either, but you just kind of work through a problem just like any other, and you go figure out how to solve it. And if you are a passive investor, so that's the nugget for the active investor. If you're the passive investor and you are making a good lick at work, you are making a high salary, a high W-2, you're a professional, or you are a seasoned individual that has a lot of tenure in your field, wherever it may be, this is the stuff that, for the most part, just invest passively, keep this high earning wage and put your money to work. I didn't realize this until 2018 was the first year that I really said, you know what, I need to invest passively, because it took me those 10 years to buy 8 houses. And then I paid for some education. They're like, this is how you become active in real estate. I said, okay, great. I'm going to go do that. And then I tried to buy 10 deals in 1 year. And we did actually pull off, 8 or 9 transactions. It wasn't quite 10, but we did that many in 1 year. That was the same year that I had as the highest ever paid at this point in my tech career. I had 60 salespeople. I had a bunch of sales managers, and I realized, what the heck am I doing? Well, towards the end of my career, what the heck am I doing? I'm spending so much time, effort, and energy. I would have probably made more money at the W-2 job had I put the same time, effort, and energy there. Probably got a second one. But anyways, that's what you want to do, is like, you want to invest your money and just, have it in a deal like this where somebody does put in the time, effort, and energy, their sweat equity. And that's what we're doing. We're leveraging, if you were in Jason's deal, you're leveraging his effort, experience, knowledge, team. You're leveraging other people's money, which is the bank. The banks are, giving us 75, 80% of our LTV, sometimes a little higher, lower, but anyways, it's just, it's an amazing vehicle. It's an amazing vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's spot on, and there's many ways to win in this. It just choose what works for you.
Yeah. Well, good, man. This has been an amazing conversation. Is there anything I haven't touched on today that you were hoping I asked about, I just didn't bring up, or anything that would provide value for you, bring additional exposure, something you're working on, you want to highlight? Sure. Anything and everything, man. It's for you.
This has been great. I love this. So every topic's been fantastic. You want to see a lot on some of the crazy running we're doing, go over, follow me on Instagram, Jason Yarusi. We are doing a Multifamily Live event out in June. You want to go see that, multifamilyliveevent.com. I would love to have you there. Or just reach out. You get a wealth of knowledge from listening to shows like Abel here and just seeing the great stuff he puts out there. So thank you to you for what you do. This is a ton of fun. It's good. It's also too, because it's great, because we most of the time we'll come to a podcast, maybe we've connected on social media, but it's just through forums or whatever is the case. But now in Clubhouse, I get to know you, and now we have this connection even further. Yeah. So this is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you're not on Clubhouse, there's like just drop this real quick. You need to go check out Jason Yarusi, Abel, Pacheco. Those are our handles. I think our names, right?
Right.
And there is. It's kind of like it's just like a podcast. It's kind of like this, except you can ask questions. So if there's any questions in between, and there's maybe another 10 other amazing individuals on a panel that we can go ask questions on. So if you're not on there, check it out. You can follow any of us on Insta or
and I think I got like 5 or 7 invites or something that I haven't used. So if you're out there missing an invite, just reach out to me. I got to use these things.
And what's the best way to connect with you? If we were, let's say, one of our audience or anybody that's listening and wants to invest or get into your world more, you mentioned Insta, but is that the best place, or is there?
So you can, of course, DM me there, but jason@yarusiholdings.com is absolutely great. We get back to you real quick.
All right, cool. I think, this has been a great. Well, I'm trying to think, is there any other topic we didn't discuss? Because I may have you for 2 more minutes and I don't want to miss a thing, man.
No, man, this is, what it is that you got the right energy, which is great. And this is why it's so fun to be around people like yourself, is that it's just a good community, right? And if you're finding like you're stuck out there and you just can't get yourself out of mental funk, well, just start every time like you're in that funk, just call yourself out, right? Lots of times we get ourselves, you're complaining a lot. Well, just start noticing you're complaining, right? You're feeling down. Start noticing you're down. Start calling yourself out, right? And you start labeling it, recognizing it, and then you start looking the other way, like. Cool. So like a quick thing, like I got a ride home from a kid in Uber, and I was like, yo, how you doing? I was coming back last night, and he was like, oh man, it's real rough. I'm like $1,000 in debt on this and $1,600 in debt on this and something. But I was just like, and the pandemic's happened, all this other points. I was like, well, and he's like, well, I just had this new baby. I was like, well, baby healthy? And he's like, yeah. I was like, are you healthy? He's like, yeah. I was like, you got this nice car. That's cool. You got a house? He's like, yeah. You sleep in the bed? Yeah. You got clean water? Yeah. So what's wrong? And then, and I said, remember these problems, I would have been in your same case at your age, but these problems, even with, 1,000, 1,600. Okay. So let's think of an actual plan. So you're driving Uber. When are you doing this? Okay, cool. What else can you do here to now help? Okay. So let's run out all your transactions for the month. You do this, figure out what you're spending, figure out what you need to spend, and figure out what you don't. Okay. Let's get that back. Okay. Start off some subscriptions. Don't eat pizza 4 times a week. Okay. There you go. Now we got another $300. Now you're down to 2,000, whatever it is. And what else can you do? Maybe, I don't know, that Uber or Lyft, maybe you add Lyft and you pick up another $50 a day or something. Okay. Now we got back, whatever, and so just having the part where if you just start looking for a solution, because now you're no longer just focused on the problem, you'll continue to really just crush life.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Jason. It's been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate it. And again, my name is Abel Pacheco. I'm the host of 5 Talents Podcast. And so if you heard something that brought you some value today, I would find it hard pressed not to. But if you did, I would say go to our podcast. Please subscribe. That would be amazing. Go to Jason's podcast, subscribe over there, reach out to him. He'd love to have someone else in his world and his following. And we appreciate everybody's time. We'll hope to see you on the next show. And thank you very much, Jason. You're the man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents Podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents Podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast.